Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. This is part 5 in our special stats series, Into the Forest, where we will present a different angle or question each time, open it up for debate, and then hopefully agree, possibly disagree, potentially argue, or maybe even reject the topic entirely. There are 5 episodes, and each of us are taking it in turns to present their idea or question to the panel before opening it up for debate. So let me introduce the panel. We have Richard Spray. We have Danscape. We have Raf the Random Pundit. And we have Paul Morley. And, of course, I'm Greg Oram. Thanks for being with us. So each speaker will have just a few minutes, or they will take the floor and present to the rest of us. And thereafter, all the team and panel will be able to join in and chip in and have a discussion based around what they've just witnessed. So we want to try and keep this episode short and sweet. So do strap yourselves in. So without further ado, let's get on to episode number 5. And that means it's me. It's my turn. So here we go. The Milenkovic factor, the Serbinator. I'm presenting my piece to the guys on the guy that I think has made quite possibly one of the biggest impacts you could ever imagine. And that, of course, is this guy, Nikola Milenkovic, the Serbinator. So I've spoken about him quite a lot on Talking Reds. I've written an article about him for the Ole Miss Riding In fanzine. And so I want to take you through what I found to present to the guys, to have a chat thereafter. So let's get straight on with it. So just quickly on Nikola Milenkovic, I mean, during his tenure at Fiorentina, you know, he stood out as a player in their defence, averaging sort of 3.5 aerial duels, one per game. That's a 79.9 success rate. And that was among the best in Serie A. He, in his time at Fiorentina, contributed 19 goals in all competitions, primarily through set pieces. And we've started to see the benefit of that at Forest, and that showcases his offensive aerial threat. And he's got experience in high pressure situations like Europa Conference League final. And this is translated into leadership at Forest. So Nikola Milenkovic signed from Fiorentina for not 27 million, beg your pardon. I should say 12 million. A bit of a typo. And he's been pivotal in transforming Nottingham Forest defence this season. His physical presence, 6'5", and that experience from Serie A and the international competitions he's involved in with Serbia has brought much needed solidity and leadership to the back line. So a statistical comparison. I've got the defence pre and post Milenkovic, and we're talking about last season. So 2023-24, before Milenkovic, Forest were in the goals conceded area 61 in 38 league games. That's 1.6 goals per game. Just clean sheets of 7 clean sheets across the season. They had an expected goals against number of 63.1. And for all the centre-back pairings and individuals that played, the aerial duels won per 90 minutes was just a 2.8 average. So not brilliant numbers. Now, we're only about just less than halfway into this season with Milenkovic. And we can already see that the goals conceded at the moment, the ratio 1.18 per game so far, that's 19 goals in 16 games, is an enhancement on last season. The clean sheets, so far we've had 5 clean sheets. It's 32% of the matches. You know, we're well on course to beat last season's clean sheets of 7. And the XGA, 17.8, showing significant defensive improvement. The aerial duels 1 per 90 from Milenkovic involvement It's 3.98. That ranking in the top 2% of defenders globally. Let's move on to the next one, where we can see his personal defensive statistics. So he's played 15 matches. He wasn't involved in the first match. He had a suspension carried over. We talked about clean sheets of 5, places him in the top 30% amongst Premier League defenders. Tackles per game is coming in at 2.1. That puts him in the top 20% of centre-backs. Interceptions per game, 2.4. That's the top 15%. And this highlights his reading of the game. Aerial duels won. He's got a 76% success rate, placing him among the top 5 centre-backs in aerial dominance. And those blocks of 1.5 per game, that's consistent with the league's best positional defenders. In an attacking sense, well, he's already scored 2 goals. That's the joint second among centre-backs. There's a few on 2, and he's in that batch as well now. I think it's Gabriel at Arsenal that's leading the way with 3. Assist-wise, he's already got 1, showing his involvement in offensive phases. That assist away at Chelsea. And also progressive passes, 3.1 per game. That's the top 10%. So he's aiding transitions from defence to attack. Now, Milenkovic ranks in the upper echelon of Premier League defenders for aerial duels and defensive actions per 90 minutes. His contributions to Nottingham Forest defensive stability have positioned him as one of the most impactful centre-backs this season. Now then, I want to talk about his partnership with Murillo. Now, Milenkovic's influence extends beyond his own stats. The partnership with Murillo's tackle success rate has increased from 63% last season to 75% this season. The duo average 5.2 clearances per 90, and that's up from 3.8 last season for the 2 centre-backs that played through those 38 games. Defensive recoveries in Forest half have increased by 12%, indicating better organisation and positioning. Now, Nikola Milenkovic has been instrumental in transforming Forest defensive setup, especially during the set-piece scenarios. So what about set pieces now? Last season, we know that Forest conceded a league-high 22 goals with set pieces. Glaring weakness. They undermined the defensive efforts that the team were trying to employ. The addition of Milenkovic has brought about a dramatic turnaround. By the midway point of this season, Forest have conceded, I think, just two goals from set-piece situations, and their XG goals against from set pieces is just at about 1.01. I mean, that's the second lowest in the Premier League. Milenkovic's aerial dominance plays a significant role in this improvement. He's winning 3.33 aerial duels per 90 minutes. He ranks among the Premier League's top defenders in this category, alongside his defensive partner Murillo, who also boasts a high aerial success rate, even for his height. Milenkovic has created a formidable barrier against opponents' set players, and their combined presence not only limits the quality of chances created by opposing teams, but also fosters greater confidence throughout the defence. Additionally, Milenkovic's organisation and leadership skills ensure the team maintains discipline during set-piece situations. And his ability to read the game and direct teammates has reduced lapses in concentration, a problem that did plague Forest last season. So by solidifying Forest's resistance to defensive set pieces, Milenkovic has turned a former weakness into a relative strength, further elevating the team's overall performance. And there's also the influence on attacking set pieces. His aerial ability is not limited to just defence. This season, goals for Forest, as I say, is 2 from headers in set-piece situations. And Forest set-piece XG is 5.2 so far this season. That's up from 3.9 last season, again, reflecting his attacking contributions. So how has Milenkovic helped Matt Sells, the goalkeeper? Well, the goalkeeper's benefited immensely, facing fewer high-quality set-piece opportunities, and that's contributed to his significantly improved save success rate. Milenkovic's role in shielding goalkeeper Matt Sells, I believe, is evident. Saves per game, Sells now faces an average of 2.3 shots on target per match, compared to 3.1 last season. And Forest's post-shot XG saved has improved, with Sells saving an additional 4.5 goals compared to expectations. Credit to the reduced quality of chances the opposition are now creating. Milenkovic has elevated Forest's defensive capabilities, reducing goals conceded and enhancing the performances of Sales and Murillo. And as I've said, his dominance in the air, leadership, and ability to contribute offensively make him indispensable for Forest. Now, these improvements place Forest in contention for their best defensive season since promotion. Now then, it's not just the defence. I want to have a quick look at how he might have helped the midfield. The arrival of Milenkovic at Nottingham Forest has not only transformed the defence, but it's had a ripple effect. So his positional intelligence, communication, and leadership have allowed midfield players to operate with greater freedom and effectiveness. So I'm going to give an analysis of how Milenkovic has directly influenced the likes of Ryan Yates, Nicholas Dominguez, and Elliot Anderson, as well as I did put Morgan Gibbs-White in there as well. So just going through these quickly, Milenkovic's ability to anticipate danger and maintain a high defensive line has reduced the workload on Yates in covering gaps in transition. So last season, Yates was forced into frequent defensive recoveries, often leaving him out of position to contribute offensively. This season, with Milenkovic organising the back line, Yates has improved his defensive positioning and now averages 3.2 tackles per game. And that's up from 2.8 last season. Milenkovic's aerial dominance has also allowed Yates to focus more on second ball recoveries, where he now averages 4.6 recoveries per match. That's up from 3.8 last season. When it comes to Dominguez, who's featured a lot more in the team over the last set of games, Dominguez's role as a kind of a deep line playmaker potentially has been made more effective by Milenkovic's secure presence behind him. Milenkovic's ability to intercept passes, that's 2.4 per game, and control aerial duels, 76%, he's winning those, has enabled Dominguez to push higher up the pitch. So Dominguez now contributes 2.9 tackles per 90 minutes, with much of his defensive work occurring in the middle third rather than the defensive third. And that's a shift that has improved Forest's transitions. Furthermore, Milenkovic's leadership has allowed Dominguez to average 6.1 progressive carries per 90, a key component in Forest's improved ball progression. Elliot Anderson, his creative freedom has been a direct byproduct of Milenkovic's influence on Forest's defensive stability. Previously, the midfield was forced to drop deeper to support a vulnerable backline, limiting Anderson's opportunities to impact the game offensively. So it wouldn't have been Anderson last season. It would have been someone in a similar role. So that has now improved, and Anderson is now able to find in that position of the park a better position for the team. With Milenkovic anchoring the defence, Anderson now is operating higher up the pitch. And he's improved his output from 2.5 key passes per game compared to 1.6 during his time at Newcastle, albeit with less game time. His pressing success has also increased to 28%, as Forest's higher defensive line, led by Milenkovic, enables Anderson to press in advanced areas. Quick bit on Morgan Gibbs-White. So he's got freedom in advanced roles, and Milenkovic's robust defensive capabilities and aerial dominance, significantly reducing Forest's vulnerability to counter-attacks. Gibbs-White has been able to push forward with less concern about defensive recoveries. It's been reflected in Gibbs-White's higher average touches in the attacking third compared to the previous season, as well as an improved chance creation metrics. Key passes per game up from 2.0 to 2.5. Counter-pressing efficiency. Milenkovic's defensive acumen has streamlined Forest's pressing system by effectively closing down opposition forwards and regaining possession higher up the pitch. He enables quick transitions where Gibbs-White thrives in exploiting spaces, resulting in critical counter-attacking actions. So, the collective impact of Milenkovic on the midfield. Milenkovic's organisational abilities and commanding presence have enhanced the midfield's balance and reduced defensive exposure. The midfield now averages 12.8 interceptions per game. That's up from 10.2 last season, allowing them to regain possession more effectively. Furthermore, the reduction in expected goals against from 1.78 to 1.18 has given the midfield more confidence to commit forward during transitions. So the synergy between Milenkovic and the midfield is particularly evident in set-piece scenarios. Milenkovic's aerial dominance enables players like Yates and Dominguez to focus on attacking or positioning for second balls, improving Forest's offensive threat. And Nikola Milenkovic has had a transformative effect on Forest's midfield then by providing defensive stability and leadership. He's allowed those players to thrive in their roles. His influence is a testament to how a commanding centre-back can elevate the performance of an entire team unit. In summary, Nikola Milenkovic has not only elevated Nottingham Forest defensive performance, but also had a transformative effect on the team's collective dynamics. His leadership, aerial prowess, and tactical intelligence have made him an indispensable part of Forest's resurgence this season in the Premier League. Okay. It's quite nerve-wracking, isn't it, when you get up there? You think, oh, God, I've got all these stats. I hope they're right. So there we go. That's my bit on Milenkovic. And I've spoken about him loads, and you know that I think he's an absolute beast. He's a Serbinator. So who wants to go first and come back at me with any thoughts or any queries? Paul, what have you got for me?
I think everything you said there validates what I've been thinking. And I'll say a few things. I think he's definitely one of a handful of players who can claim to be our player of the season this season. I think probably the other candidates would be maybe Aina, Anderson and Wood, but I think Milenkovic for me is the player of the season so far. I'd go as far as to say that he is now arguably as valuable, if not potentially even more valuable to the team than Murillo in terms of what he brings, his replaceability. And I know you've not asked me to do this on here yet, but I know you often do. People pick their best Forest teams from their lifetime. And I think if I was picking it right now, the two centre-backs would be Des Walker and Milenkovic. I think he's had that much of a transformative impact, and everything that you've just said there sort of backs up what the eye test tells you. So I no holes to pick in that whatsoever. I think you've illustrated his impact perfectly.
I mentioned a while back that I think he's our best signing in 25 years, and it's for the reasons that I've outlined in the presentation, and similar to what you were just saying then, Paul, as to why I said that. The impact that he's made has been transformational. I mean, it just really has. And I wanted to try and just have a little snapshot of how he's influencing the defence, midfield, the goalkeeper, the ones that are kind of more around him. I left the fullbacks out because we were limited for time. But, you know, are we overcooking it a little bit, Richard, do you think? I mean, is there anything that you can sort of recognise and think, well, actually, you know what, maybe he's not so good at this or maybe not so good at that? Or are you fully on board?
I mean, from an eye test standpoint, just how I generally feel about watching him play. I mean, you know, it's interesting. It's going to be fun to actually go back and watch replays and matches and particularly focus on him from a positioning standpoint. I mean, he's clearly one of the most physically dominating center backs in the Premier League. And I don't even think that's a question in terms of, and he's very good and very adept. And I think we saw this when we were sort of scouting him at the beginning, how well he can manage to be physical without giving up a lot of fouls. In fact, the data supports that on his historically, which I think is remarkable, just a testament to his mind and how well he manages engagement with the opposing player. One thing I think is really interesting, I'd like to do a deeper dive on this because we've had this conversation before, and I've made the comment, I wonder if how much of his intelligence, football acumen, you know, as it were, is impacting our ability to set things up better. How much is that football acumen helping from a mentoring perspective as it relates to Murillo? I think you were kind of trying to touch on that. I would like to see how we could potentially extrapolate from that sort of tackle percentage increase that you mentioned. I think 63%. I don't know if it was at 63% of overall tackles he's made or 56% in terms, 63% in terms of successful tackles and tackles won, basically. I'd be curious to look at, because you're not wrong. I mean, I think he's clearly going to have an impact on him because the way that they play so synergistically, the way that they obviously have been practicing together on the training ground, he's got to have an influence on him considering how much time he's played, right? I mean, he's just significantly more minutes. Yes, he's older, so clearly that's going to happen, but both on an international level and on a club level. And so knowing Murillo's history and knowing how little he's played in the last three and a half years or so from a senior football perspective, it's amazing to know what he could possibly do. But the other thing I want to say real quick, sorry to go on a little bit. Remember when we were profiling these players at the beginning, how we all saw the way the club was managing what they were looking for from a recruitment standpoint in terms of a physical profile. Jake O'Brien, for example, David Carmo, him, even Jacob Greaves, right? Even though he wasn't really taken seriously, I think, as a legitimate possible player to come to Forest. But
He was by you.
Well, yeah, but no, we won't go there, will we? That was kind of ridiculous. But anyway, the point being is that we never knew what we needed was really Nikola Milenkovic. Like, we were going after these younger guys that potentially could be replacements for Murillo, because we're thinking, oh, Bali's there. We can re-sign Bali. We can put Bali in there. And I know Dan wouldn't be upset about that. Probably none of us would. But in reality, what we got is now potentially one of the, as Paul alluded to, one of the most valuable defensive players in the Premier League. Can you imagine what's going to happen in this offseason with him in particular? I'd be curious to know, as Paul referenced as well, which one gets the higher valuation. Because Murillo's more of this sort of token modern center back, has more advancement to him, he's better on the ball. But Milenkovic just, you can't work that guy over in the penalty box. You can't really work him over on any fair. Oh, exactly.
He is a good old-fashioned centre half, but he is exactly what every Premier League team, I think, would want someone like him in their team. I mean, he is cut from the same cloth as Vidic at Man United, and I think Vidic. I beg your pardon. I think Man United have got their eye on him. I heard someone say they're looking at him, and so I'm worried in the transfer window ahead that we could be under danger. Or in danger, rather. Danscape, come to you. We saw Morato get some significant minutes alongside Milenkovic when Murillo went off, and it just felt to me like, I mean, I thought Morato did really well when he came on, and he's another younger player. But Milenkovic's only 27, so he's not old. He's going towards that end of his career. I mean, how impressive have you been with him, and do you think that keeping hold of him now to mentor the Moratos and the Murillos is really important?
I think I'm the least sold on him of everyone on the panel, although we've not heard from Raf yet. So I'm taking a little while to warm up to him as much as everybody else, because I think, again, it's about context. So I think he's the right fit for us. He's exactly what we needed in terms of leadership at the back. We've gone from playing Omobamidele regularly, who's a very young guy, just wanted to do his own job, not worry about anyone else on the pitch. We've gone from Niakate, who for me was the wrong profile for what we need in the Premier League. Not so good in the air, not so strong physically, more of a quick player, good on the ball. So I think he was the right fit for what we needed. And I think that's why he's improved us, because he's the right fit. But we probably could have found one of 5 or 6 other players that would have been the right fit in that respect. And I think what you're seeing here is the impact of the settled side and the Nuno effect more than the Milenkovic effect, if I'm honest. And that's not me being against Milenkovic. I just think you're seeing the entire team perform better in a defensive way. And I'm sort of saying, I don't know as Milenkovic has had that much to do, basically. Like, when I watch games, I'm not seeing last-ditch tackles. I'm not seeing, and that might be down to him, but I think it's more down to the way the team's set up and the protection that our backline is getting from a very organised midfield now, who've spent a month on the training pitch in Spain or wherever, knowing exactly where to be, to fill the holes, to fill the gaps. Even Chris Wood up front now seems to know exactly what his job is to stop, the attacking teams getting at us so easily. And I think in the games where we've seen our midfield struggle and get dragged out, we've seen our backline struggle more. And I think that's what proves my theory at the minute in my head, is that in those games where our midfield get dragged out, like Arsenal or Man City, we've not actually seen our backline just snuff them out in the way that I think is sort of people are imagining. And that's, it's just my opinion. And I think against Man City, he was a bit too obsessed with Haaland, and that left spaces elsewhere. I think the first goal we conceded against Man United, he stepped across, I noticed when I watched it back, and he sort of changed his position. And I was sort of thinking, why have you done that? And again, that was when we were sort of exposed 2-on-2. So there's a few. Look, I'm not saying he's a bad defender. I'm really not. Like, he is exactly what we needed, and his leadership in that is part of it. I just think what people are projecting onto him, I think, is part again of the whole team being so much better defensively. And yeah, we've upgraded massively, and it's crucial to what we're doing. But I think when you look at, like I say, Nuno's past teams at Wolves, he made Conor Cody a brilliant defender. Like, they had a brilliant defensive record with Conor Cody, who's never been any good since. So I'm attributing it more to Nuno. And I did one thing the other day, is I compared Bolly in his prime at Wolves, his stats, to Milenkovic in his in his prime, in which he is now age-wise at Forest. And Bolly smoked him. So that's my final words.
Okay, Raf, what do you reckon?
I'm actually going to carry on with what Danscape's saying, because, and do not get me wrong, Ike Milenkovic has actually sorted out our set pieces, and I do think the most valuable thing that he's brought is vocal communication and tactical nous, coming from an Italian league that's highly tactical, highly defensively tactical, and running a defensive unit and bringing that skill set over to what we have. I agree, though, with Danscape that we are pinning the world of the whole team improvement on him landing. I think I would challenge a number of those statistics that you put up for midfield being an Anderson influence, not a Milenkovic influence of him coming into the team. I would also, and this is what I don't know, if you look at the uptick in cells, and if you go to episode 1 of when I was talking about the goalkeeping situation, you look at how many goals have been stopped by cells alone, actually looking at it, and you look at how much Bolly, when Bolly was on the pitch, we only conceded 1.4 goals per game when he was on. So we're not looking at a massive difference from when Bolly was involved in the later part of his career when he was on the field last year. But we have seen a huge uptick in goals conceded from set pieces and his threat and his organisation. So I do think he's absolutely wonderful. He's definitely made the team better, but I don't think that he is the second coming. And I think that it's a collective unit, like Dan was saying, about how the team has generally improved. And I would challenge the viewer here to take a look at episode 1, take a look at this episode, balance the stats together and see what you think, and let us know what you think, actually, what your view is on really the level of the Milenkovic factor, maybe the sales factor, maybe the Anderson factor. I don't know.
I think everyone has. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just to pose a question to Raf and Dan, and I might know Dan's answer, but that might be driven by heart rather than head. I think we probably could all agree that Des Walker's the best defender Forest have had in the last 40 years. I don't think there's anybody.
Centre back,
yeah, centre back. Yeah. I think everyone would concur with that. If you're going to pick one player to go alongside him, from everybody you've seen in the last 30, 40 years, can you name anyone better than Milenkovic? Better suited than Milenkovic?
Not better suited. I think Murillo's impressed me more this season with what he's had to deal with and his improvement as well in terms of aerial. But I get what you're saying, like as a pairing, Murillo and Walker's probably not ideal. So you do need a player like Milenkovic. And I'm, like I said before, I'm not saying he's a bad defender. I just don't think he's had that much to do to defend because we've been so good as a team. Just quickly, one thing, because I meant to mention it in the Villa match. What I did love about Milenkovic is at the end of that game, because of the atmosphere in the ground, and I don't know if it was on the cameras, but he was like smiling so much walking around after the end of the game. Like he was loving it because that was probably the first home game he's had where he's properly experienced what he was expecting the City ground to be like in terms of like the noise and the just the feeling of the game.
Yeah. I mean, his raw at Old Trafford, I loved that when he scored. I was chuffed that he got another goal this time at the City ground. And, again, I've said it many times before. I just think there's something special about playing football under the lights, and the City ground is a special place. And obviously we're biased, but it is. And I think when that crowd is really on it and you get those kind of endings to matches in our favour, then, it just gets the juices flowing. And I'm sure that he was enjoying every second of that. Don't get me wrong. I see where you guys are coming from. I absolutely do. And I'm certainly not portraying him to be, oh my God, he's the best defender we've ever had. He's the best defender in the Premier League and he's this, that and the other. I just think for some reason there's an aura around him. There's something about him and it just fits into what we needed. Yes, he's what we needed. He came at the right moment. We were looking for a certain profile of player and he's the one that we went and got. And I'm so pleased we did. But it just seems to be clicking because I think personality-wise as well, there's so much that you have to take into consideration when you're signing players. He's coming in from Serbia. These guys, playing in Serie A, which is a great league in itself. you bring in guys in that are experienced, but sometimes they just don't fit. Sometimes they just don't work out. But everything about him has worked out, personality-wise, leadership-wise. He's one of the captains for Serbia. He's leading that line at the back. I've seen him make some important interceptions that I've seen him in games, and I thought, my God, it's like a brick wall at times where he's just got himself into the right position. So I've really been watching him really closely. And I'm not saying you guys haven't, of course, but I've been really watching him and trying to kind of maybe prove in my own mind that he is as good as I think he is. And I think he is. I think he's been absolutely terrific for us. He's brought the best out in Murillo, I think. But Murillo's also had a great season. Everyone's up their game. Everyone has individually got better. And that can't just be for someone else. They've all individually improved. Nuno will be a massive part of that. So based on what Dan talked about, based on what Paul talked about as well, Matt Sales has definitely improved his own game. He's the one saving the shots. He's the one that's now reaching those world-class saves or those much better saves. So everyone's up their game. And I just thought that, for the guy coming in, he's been at the club for a matter of months, actually. His impact has been absolutely huge. Guys, we have to finish it there, unfortunately, because we are out of time. I know you want to come in, Raf, but we want to keep these episodes as sharp as we possibly can. Thank you so much if you've been watching along. We've done all 5 episodes for you now. Our special stats series, the one with the stats, we've called it Into the Forest because we've gone into deep diving the Nottingham Forest team squad, and the data hopefully is interesting for you. But first and foremost, we hope that you've enjoyed listening to us. Do join in and comment along, hit like, hit subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time.